I'm your host, Elizabeth, and this is For the Talkers. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Elizabeth, and thank you for joining me on today's episode of For the Talkers, where we learn and connect and we laugh while we're doing it. So today is Halloween. Happy Halloween. I have a super fun witchy episode today. But before we get into that, I just wanted to say hello to any new listeners. Me and Grace attended UVU's VentureCon today. We're going to be talking about that more next week, more details. But hello to anyone who is new to the podcast. Thank you all for joining. I love the community of talkers and just cannot wait for the next couple episodes. So today we're jumping in with a interview spooky episode, but next week we're going to slow it down, do another kind of intro with me for sure. Maybe our co-host Grace will join. We shall see. So first, I wanted to say that I held a giveaway at VentureCon today, and I just ran the fun little wheel with everyone in it, and Miranda Rose is the winner of the giveaway. So Miranda, we'll see you on Monday to get your prize. But yeah, so glad everyone is here. Today, obviously, a question I got a lot was, what's the podcast about? And my number one answer is connection. This podcast is for us to connect with new people when we do our interviews, and also to be able to connect with people more. I love the podcast as a conversation starter and a way to connect with new people. So thank you all for being here and listening. I am so excited. Today's episode's a bit longer, so we're going to jump right in. I had the wonderful opportunity to interview Leslie, and Leslie is a somatic breath coach, and we talk about microdosing as well. So I just want to put out there that this episode does have some strong language, some strong content, so just keep that in mind. But I'm so excited. We end the episode talking about the Mormon wives of the lives of the Mormon housewives, whatever, that show. We end with talking about that. So you're going to be laughing, smiling all the way through, and definitely ending this episode going, oh my God, I didn't know that. I'm so excited. I can put these practices into my day-to-day life to decrease feelings of anxiety. And really, today's episode is a girlies episode. We are talking about women and how women are not included in studies as they should, about how hard menstruating is, all the things. And Leslie was just a dream to interview, so you guys are going to absolutely love hearing from her. She has some amazing resources, so check out her website and her socials if you guys are feeling inspired and you want to get into some of that breath work and really healing. And you know what? It's about to be new year, new you, so we are getting some new habits, okay? Let me tell you a little bit more about Leslie. Leslie Draffin is a women's somatic coach, psychedelic microdosing guide, breath and meditation teacher, and menstrual cycle educator. Leslie believes somatic practices like breathwork, along with sacred earth medicine, have the power to bring us home to ourselves, awaken our authenticity, and heal the trauma locked within our subconscious. And how does that not just perfectly fit into what we do here at For the Talkers? So join me in welcoming Leslie. All right. Hello, Leslie.
Hi, how are you?
So excited to be here having this conversation right now. I'm really excited to learn from you today.
I'm excited to be here too. I'm excited to be on the show and to go deeper into all things somatics and psychedelics.
Yes, awesome. Okay, well, I will start with my happy, funny, and sad moments, and they're kind of simple, but my happy is I finished book number 5 out of 8 in a series that I'm reading. So it took me a while to read that one specifically. So I'm just so happy that I finished it and can get moving along in the series.
I love it. What was the series?
It's The Throne of Glass.
I knew it was going to be Sarah J. Maas. Okay.
Yep.
Yep. I have a friend
Mm.
loaning me the books, and so I'm like, "Okay, I need to, like, get through these." But I enjoy them. I think they're great. And then my funny is just, Ali and Helen Belair. I don't know if you're familiar with them. There's kinda like influencers on TikTok. Ali does a lot of, like, stand-up comedy, and they're just, like, the cutest little queer couple, and I just love and they're just hilarious, like, unfiltered, kind of like they're not trying to be funny, they're just hilarious, and so every time I find their videos, I just can't stop laughing and have to do a deep dive into everything they've posted lately. Yes, and then my sad, which I was like, "Well, perfect that I'm recording with Leslie because we'll probably talk about this, but it's just my period. It's terrible, awful, makes me very sad and all the things, right?" So I'm just like, "That's my sad today because I wish I could just never have one ever
Oh
again."
my goddess. Well, I'm so glad that we're talking.
Yeah. Yes, it will be perfect. So, okay, I would love to hear
So my
yours.
happy is that we recently got a puppy. So we lost two dogs in 2022, and then my soulmate dog died in May. So we got this
Oh,
puppy. She is the cutest little thing. Her name is Nola. And so she's certainly bringing me
oh,
a lot of happy. And also she's kind of the funny. Um, but I
okay.
think what's funnier is I'm babysitting a couple of other dogs this weekend, and the little one got her period. It's like, what? How funny that
What?
I am a certified
Yeah.
menstrual cycle educator and this dog's got her period at my house. So we have like all of the things. She has all of her little
Yes.
coziness. Like we're giving her space. I thought that was very funny. Some people might think that's sad, but I thought it was hilarious.
No, very, very ironic
Hmm.
timing.
Hmm. Yeah.
I love
And
it.
then I guess my sad is heavy, but I'm from I live in Texas now, but I'm from the Carolinas, and so we had gone up to visit Western North Carolina this past summer, like in the exact place that Hurricane Helene just like decimated this past month. And so seeing all of the destruction is still just making me really sad. And as a former news anchor, being able to watch this with the eyes of a human and not the eyes of someone who is doing it for work has really, I think, made me break open in a way that's kind of beautiful, but also obviously sad that this place that I saw literally 4 months ago in its prime and just like thriving, it's kind of just gone and really messed up. So that's my sad. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very
Yeah.
heartbreaking and interesting, like you're saying, you probably used to look at it of like a very
Yeah.
objective lens of just like, this is what's happening, but to really like feel it and take
Hmm.
it all in,
Yeah,
it's a
for sure.
lot. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. So, if you just want to tell the listeners a little bit about you and kind of preface what we're going to be talking about today, we got a lot of questions from the audience, so we'll get some
I
answers
love
to
it.
those.
So, my name is Leslie Draffin, and as I mentioned, I am a former TV news anchor turned women's somatic coach, microdosing psychedelics guide, and breath and meditation teacher. And I really came to this work after spending about 20 years of my own life deeply disconnecting, punishing myself, numbing out through things like eating disorders and alcohol abuse because of a deep core wound around worthiness and around feeling lovable, which was activated for me when at 18 I was diagnosed with herpes a month after my first sexual encounter. And as a preacher's daughter from the deep south of the United States, that sexual shame ran deep. So I spent a lot of time in my 20s getting addicted to hustling and trying to prove how good I was and how worthy I was. And on the outside, it looked like I had it all. I was making six figures at the top of my career, doing so well by society's standards. And internally, I was battling, anxiety, depression, undiagnosed PTSD, and doing a lot of things that the Western medical model said I should do to feel better, therapy and medications, and it really wasn't working. So, what I found was psychedelics and somatic work. And these have really been these beautiful teachers that have helped me heal my mental health, get sober, overcome my eating disorders, really work on that worthiness wound, and also help other women just like me.
Amazing. I love it. What a inspiring and like noble path to take on, especially specifically with women. I love, feminine women-led spaces. They're just so special. So I really love that. And we'll just start with the very first question, which I feel like will have a lot to expand on. But question is just how can microdosing and or somatic practices help with anxiety?
I love this. So, I think the thing to first understand about anxiety is that we think it's all in our head, but in reality, it's often really led by the sensations in our body. And so, when we can start to understand how the language of our body is communicating with the language of our mind, we can oftentimes get out of those ruminating thoughts, those worst case scenarios, those catastrophizing situations, which I have lived in for like, God, most of my life. Right, like you're laying in bed at night, you can't fall asleep, you're thinking about that thing you said to your coworker, or you're thinking about like
Yeah.
how if this happens, then I'm homeless, I'm gonna die. Right? Like, and it's some like weird arbitrary thing that gets you to that death as the final fear. So the first thing is understanding that it's not just in your head, it's in your body. And so somatics can really help by allowing us to meet those sensations and meet the nervous system, which is probably in fight or flight when those sensations come up, with compassionate curiosity and use some really simple tools to begin to come back into a peaceful state where we can create a little bit of calm. And so the tools are things like breath work or taking a walk or taking, a cold shower, things that can shift our state. When it comes to microdosing, which I think is just such a powerful tool when especially combined with somatic work. Psilocybin is what we're talking about here. And all of our conversation today will be about psilocybin, which is magic mushrooms. That's what I deal with primarily and what I coach people through. So, when we look at the way that psilocybin works in the brain, it impacts something called our 5-HTA receptors. It's our serotonin receptors, which are in our gut and in our brain. And they're really heavily located in a part of the brain called the default mode network, which is this high level processing center where a bunch of our deeply held core beliefs, thoughts, patterns live. And I believe that that's partly where anxiety lives. Because if your default mode is anxious, if that's your just every day, because that's really what mine was, I had generalized anxiety disorder. I was kind of always operating at this place of like anxious, worried, overthinking, verging on panic. So, psychedelic microdosing can help to soften and dim that overactive default mode network and turn on other parts of our brain so that we create new neural pathways. And so, when we pair microdosing with somatics like breath work, it kind of rewires our brain into this state of the norm now being calm, the default mode now being calm versus the default mode being anxious.
Wow. Very interesting. I'm just like, okay, I need a minute. That's a
Yeah.
lot. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense though.
And you
That's
can
really
think about
cool.
it just as, if you're always going around and your subconscious feels anxious, right? Like maybe you don't even know why you're anxious, because that was certainly sometimes my case. Microdosing helps to soften the edges of that. And when you start these really beautifully positive habits of breath work or meditation or just going for a walk and moving your body, that can sort of pair up to really give some holistic healing to those anxious mindsets, those anxious thoughts.
Yeah. So I'm curious, do you have to be doing something specific when you're microdosing in order to like specifically target that anxious response? Like, is there something specific you're doing or it just kind of helps in
So
general?
when I
If that
first
makes sense.
started back in very early 2022, I was doing, I say normal daily rituals. So I was meditating or I was maybe doing some um, breath embodiment or stretching. I was in therapy at that point as well. And I was working with a certified guide. And so my morning practices sort of looked like, being with tarot or being journaling, right? Things like that. I didn't have like this really dedicated thing. And I didn't set out intentionally to help my anxiety when I started to microdose. I was actually microdosing to heal my sexual shame. But over time, the anxiety was what was really deeply impacted, as was my alcohol abuse. So, to answer your question, I don't think you have to do anything in particular, but I did develop a method called the shift method, which is a 9-minute practice that you can use every single day that is showing right now in a group that I'm running to be incredibly potent when paired with microdosing. And so that is really simply 2 minutes of journaling, 3 minutes of breath work, and 4 minutes of movement every single day, where during that time, you're really thinking about the sensations that you're feeling in your body. You're honoring what comes up and you're taking stock of how you're feeling moment to moment. And I'm seeing it like be super powerful for women with ADHD, which I have, and people who, suck at meditation, right? Like people who think you have to sit in
Yeah.
silence. That's not what's up for those of us with, honestly, female anxious minds. It's terrible because sitting in silence is like the worst thing when you have anxiety, because then you think you suck at it and then you're judging yourself because you can't meditate. So the shift method can be a really beautiful tool to pair with microdosing, because it is that positive, actionable step that's sort of layering on healing day by day. And I find it to be really fun and so simple.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've never heard of that. The 9-minute thing. That's really cool. And yes, I heavily relate to that. I'm like, you want me to just sit and not think of anything? Like that's gonna make me think
Yes.
of everything in the whole world.
100%. Yeah. And so that's why I designed the shift method, so that you can have something to
Yeah.
do. It's got a timer, it's a playlist that I can send you to put in show notes if folks
Yeah.
want it. So that for the first song you journal,
Yeah.
it's just enough to brain dump. 2 minutes of journaling is nothing. It's like a blip. 3 minutes of breath, 4 minutes of movement, and then you're done. And honestly, you just feel
I love it.
lighter. And oftentimes folks feel ready to then do a meditation or then do something more. So it's like perfect for folks who don't have a
Yeah.
lot of time, but those who also want to dive deeper as well.
Totally. So, what other kind of conditions or diseases are psychedelics effective in treating, helping?
So many, so many. So here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk about psychedelic use, we're talking about two different types. Microdosing is when you take a teeny tiny amount of psychedelics, so small that you do not hallucinate or trip. And when you microdose, you're doing it several times a week for several weeks at a time.
Mm,
Then you've got your big doses, right? You've got those 1.5 to 5 gram doses where you do hallucinate. And so when we look at the clinical trials and the case studies, most of them are targeted at the higher doses, because that's what the big corporations like Johns Hopkins, Harvard, oh gosh, there's a school in the UK that has now escaped me. Oxford, I think, is looking at it, but they're looking a lot at those big doses. And those have been shown in study after study to help with things like depression, anxiety, PTSD, chronic pain. Microdosing, on the other hand, is not as widely studied. And the studies that we do have are not as conclusive as to whether it's beneficial or not. But as a woman whose body was not fucking studied until like the 1990s, I don't really give a shit, to be honest. Like, I know
right.
what I know because I've experienced it myself. I've seen the anecdotal evidence, which that just means millions of people talking about this on the internet who have been microdosing. So I guess I just take the case studies with a grain of salt. With all of that said, what I'm seeing anecdotally in my personal life and with my clients is that microdosing, taking tiny amounts so that you don't trip, is still really beneficial for anxiety. It's super beneficial for depression and ADHD. It's really helpful for gently peeling away the layers of trauma that can be related to PTSD, chronic pain and inflammation, addiction. As I can say, I've been sober for almost 2 years at this point.
That's
Yes, thank you.
awesome.
And then the other thing is mood,
Yeah.
right? So general mood
Mhm.
stabilization, folks who have issues with mood swings or emotional dysregulation or nervous system dysregulation, I think are all things that microdosing can really benefit. And for me and my work, I have really noticed it helping people with their periods, fewer PMS symptoms, a greater ability to handle PMDD symptoms, although it may or may not actually lessen the symptoms overall. But cramps, I'm seeing go down as much as 50% in the people I work with. And mood swings and overall, just like mood elevation is something that I'm seeing to be really helpful when they're including microdosing into their healing.
Awesome. So remind me really quick, when you say you're working with them, how often are they microdosing to see those
So
results?
most of the folks that I work with are microdosing 3 to 5 times a week for 8 weeks.
Okay.
I work with folks over an 8-week period.
Okay.
And some may extend that to 10 to 12 weeks, but then you always take at least a month off. So yeah, 3 to 5 times a week.
Okay.
And I did develop a cyclical microdosing protocol. So when we talk about how often you're microdosing, that's called a protocol. And there are some super popular ones out there. One is 1 day on, 2 days off. So microdose, skip 2 days. Microdose, skip 2 days. There's another one that's microdose for 3 days in a row, skip 2 days. Microdose for 3 days in a row. All of these were created by men. Surprise, surprise. And so I created one that is based on female hormones because I started my coaching journey as a certified menstrual cycle coach and educator. And what that protocol looks like is that in the 2 weeks after your period, when your symptoms are pretty much nowhere to be found, your mood is elevated, you're feeling great, you microdose twice a week. And then in the next 2 weeks, when your symptoms pop up and your period happens, you can microdose as many as 5 times a week. And so when my folks do that protocol, that's really when I've seen the PMDD symptoms become more manageable. But I have to say that I haven't necessarily seen the PMDD symptoms go completely away. It's like you become better able to manage and respond to the crises in your life when you microdose, even if you still have the crises.
Totally. Well, considering if you go to a doctor and you say you're struggling with PMDD and they say, okay, well, there's nothing we can do, I'll take that.
And honestly, here's the thing, right? So when I was looking at ways I thought women and people who are born in female bodies would benefit most from microdosing, I looked at that fact that we are gaslit to hell and back by the medical model. And it takes like years to get diagnosed with things like endometriosis and PMDD. It's absolutely atrocious. And so while anecdotally, we have a lot of evidence around microdosing, we don't have the clinical studies to back it up yet. And by God, we've got like one study on the menstrual cycle and psilocybin.
Right.
One. And there's 3 people in it. So for me, it's like, honestly, if this can help, why not try it? If you feel called to it,
Totally.
if you are someone who feels like the risk is worth that for you, because we have to be honest, like it's not legal everywhere. It is a risk. And for me, the risk was worth taking and I reaped the rewards. But yeah, I think you're right. Like it takes so long. And most of the time it's like, oh, take SSRIs for like 2 weeks. Do like 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off of SSRIs for your PMDD. I'm like, are you kidding me? Or take them all the time for a 2-week period of your life. That's hellacious. And then now you've got to tack on all the SSRI side effects, which are super fucked up. No. Yeah, I think that mushrooms are...
We can try something else.
Mushrooms are the better option, in my opinion.
I love it. So kind of flipping the question. So when would psychedelics not be an ideal treatment?
Thank you so much for asking this question. Well, I believe, well, first we'll talk about the contraindications, right? So if you have a close personal or familial history of schizophrenia or bipolar 1, it's often not recommended. Also heart disease, that's also not recommended. And then there are a bunch of medications that might be contraindications as well. However, the studies are always changing. 2 years ago, when I started my training, there was a really popular medicine out there called trazodone that they thought was a contraindication. And now they're saying it might not be. So you have to do your research. I'm not someone who can sit here and like spout off all the medications and like how they might interact. You can talk to someone who's trained in this or hopefully have a conversation with your doctor. I also know that that's really tricky. So if you need someone to talk to, you can talk to me and I can put you in touch with psychedelic friendly doctors. The other thing that is not a medicalized, I guess, contraindication, but I think is something that's really important. Because of the fact that psychedelics are expanders, if you're in an acute, meaning a very intense state of grief, of sadness, of depression, of anxiety, it could make those things worse. right? Because it's one of those things where it's part of the mystical experience of psychedelics. They kind of amplify things in a way that sometimes we don't fully understand. So that's one of the reasons why I developed the shift method this summer, because I lost my dog. He passed away. I was in such deep grief. I was like, there is no way I'm touching mushrooms, because I knew that it could make it worse. So I wanted something else to start doing, and that's why I tried those somatic approaches. So yeah, I would say that if you're in deep addiction, you may also want to steer clear. And I should also say that everything that I'm recommending and talking to you about, I recommend you do with a trained professional. You certainly can go and DIY your own microdosing healing, but it's one of those things where, like, if you want to learn a sport, if you go and try to learn it on the internet, it's not going to get you as close to your goal as it would be to get an actual trainer, right? Or actually join a team.
Right.
So that's kind of my thoughts as you're listening to this. Please take it all with that little asterisk. With professional help, these
Yes.
things can happen.
Yes. Yeah. Because then, you open yourself up to some potential negative effects that could otherwise be, maybe steered clear of,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So the last question from the audience that we had is, what are the best ways to deal with anxiety, which we already touched on, but they also were wondering, like, fatigue and kind of insomnia.
Well, I think fatigue and insomnia, they're kind of separate things. Okay, so looking at this from a somatic approach and thinking about the nervous system and where insomnia might come from and where fatigue might come from, both are likely due to chronic stress, and they're impacting you in kind of different ways, right? Fatigue being so exhausted that you can't feel like you can function, and insomnia being very wired so you feel like you can't sleep, which also will lead to fatigue, right? So I would suggest looking at this whole idea of the opposite of medicine, like the opposite medicine for what's happening. So let's say, and I've certainly been there, you're feeling really burnt out, you're feeling really fatigued, you work all week, you keep yourself super busy, and then when you get home, you crash. On the weekends, you doom scroll and you bed rot, and you don't get shit done at all, and then you judge yourself. Okay. Not speaking from experience, LOL.
Right. No, I've never done that. I've literally never had months of
Right?
doing that.
So
No.
that's a really classic case of functional freeze. And that can happen when we have been in this activated state for a really long time. So, what I would recommend is finding ways to be in connection, because we isolate when we're in those states. What is a small way that I can connect? Could it be with a person? Could it be with an animal? Could I get outside and get some sunlight? Take a little walk. I'm not saying that you're going to go kill a 30-minute workout or some shit. Absolutely not. But getting outside, moving the body, and finding a little bit of anchor in that state of safety, that state of calm. So, what is one thing that makes you happy? Like one fucking thing, the tiniest thing. Maybe it's your favorite scent, like get your favorite candle. Maybe it's like your favorite food, or maybe you don't like what that outfit looks like, so just get rid of it, right? Like find ways to little by little boost your energy naturally with these tiny little steps. And then on the flip side, if it's insomnia that might be related to you being in a state of fight and flight, which is a lot of activation too, you want the opposite medicine, which is that calm. So you could start bathing instead of showering if you have that option. You could start slowly sitting outside in the mornings to sip your coffee if you could. And again, finding ways like breath work, which you can do a super simple breath practice, which is breathe in for 4 counts, hold your breath for 7 counts, exhale for 8 counts. That's a really nice one that can help to calm you. And so that's what I'll say about that. If you want more information or more about like anxiety related insomnia, because girl, that is kind of different. I did do a Instagram live, God, like last summer, because I had a panic attack and I couldn't sleep. And I listed like a ton of things that I had done to cure the panic attack. So you can find that on my Instagram.
Perfect. That's a great resource. So I've been asking this question to all my previous guests, and I think it's a great question. I'm really curious to hear what you think of it. So you kind of shared in the beginning, right? You had this journey of healing that you needed to get on. You had things going on, they weren't working well. I feel like for a lot of people starting that journey and like it feels so like unachievable or so not realistic, right? So what would you say in your journey, big or small, that happened or that you did that was like, okay, I think I can do this now. I think healing is going to be able to happen. I think I'm going to be able to recover. Like whatever that end goal was, what was something that happened or you did that was like, okay, I got this?
Oof. So I feel like my healing journey is a cautionary tale. What you have to know about me is that I'm an overachiever, and I like in 2019 when I started my healing journey in January, I remember like this activation happening under the full moon. I fucking threw myself into the healing journey of like, I don't know, a master's student. Like, I'm going to do this, 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 this. I had like a list.
Yeah.
Everything was like a check
Yep.
mark.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
trying to be the best healer there was, which is very on brand for me.
Yes.
And all I did was make it
Yeah.
worse.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Like,
So I would say that when I finally understood what it was to rest and to do less, that I think was the turning point for my actual healing. So if you're listening to this and you're like on this journey, first do a whole lot less than you think you have to do. Pick one thing. Pick one fucking thing. And if I had to tell you what to pick breathwork. So I found breathwork in like late 2018. And there's two main types of breath work. You can just do breath awareness, which is a very meditative breath. And then you can do conscious breathing, which are, God, probably 100 different breath techniques, from what I just told, that 4-7-8, to just breathing in and out forcefully, so many different ways. But the breath is so interesting because it has such an impactful just way of working on the body at all the levels: mind, body, soul, spirit. It can help with physical issues like pain. It can help with cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, stress, weight gain, cortisol, like all kinds of things, issues with sleep. And what I have really noticed is that it is beautiful at helping elevate mood and helping you to feel the feelings that you need to feel. So I keep coming back to this dog of mine. Obviously, he was a huge deal. When all summer long, I
Yeah.
thought I was processing this dog's loss. And I did an extended certification around breath that wrapped up about 2 months ago. And in it, I had to do twice a day breathwork practices. And God, I just was finally able to access my heart space and to feel the things I needed to feel and allow myself the freedom to feel them without judgment. Because I think a lot of times when we're healing and we get on this journey, we judge ourselves for not being there faster. And the truth is that there is nowhere to be except home to your body. And you're already there, like it or not. So how can you make that space feel as good as you possibly can? And I think breathwork is a really wonderful tool to quickly shift it. And I'm talking like 5 minutes or less. There are things that you will feel that, if you're looking for a little boost of a little boost of encouragement that, oh, this is possible. I think breathwork's probably the best tool there is.
Yeah, totally. And just what a great turning point. I think so many women specifically, it's like it's that, right? Like I need to have the color coded list. I need to be the best, right? Like we need to, and like yeah, all the things, and you spend all this time and money and like the
Oh God.
prep too, I feel like. And then it's like, "Oh, fuck, I, like, actually
Mhm.
have to heal, like, I actually have to go through
Yeah.
and do that." So I love that. You're saying,
Yeah.
"Slow down, pick one thing, you can do it." I love that, and breathwork sounds so interesting. I definitely wanna get more into that, and I've seen a lot of things for, like, labor and delivery, like, it can help in
Yeah.
lots of different, phases and stages of life. That's really cool. Is there anything else that you specifically utilize breath work with?
I mean, honestly, I think breath work, I'm just kind of obsessed with it these days. Yeah,
Yeah.
I for the longest time, breath work was a really beautiful way for me to increase my libido. So when I came off of hormonal birth control in 2020 after 16 years, first of all, I had the most horrendous mood swings out there, and I lost my libido completely. So there were these forms of breath work that I had found that really centered around like thinking of breathing in through the vulva and breathing into the womb and activating that space. And, clearly we know that we don't breathe in through our vagina, but like, it's a whole
Right.
guided visualization type of thing, and really
Yeah,
getting into that
interesting.
belly. So I found that was really helpful. It's also really helped me become more comfortable in my changing body. So I stopped dieting completely in 2021, and my body's changed like
Amazing.
significantly since then, after being anorexic for years and then bulimic and then orthorexic. So my belly and I have had a very stressed relationship, we'll say. So breathwork has helped me to feel less shame around my belly, to acknowledge it in a way that feels less judgmental. And, I'm not going to sit here and say that like I love my belly so much all the time, but it's more of a neutrality that I have around it now. And I think that breathwork helped me with that for sure.
Amazing. Wow. So if someone listening, right, talkers, they're like, wow, I need to do that. I need to know more about that. How can they find you? How can they find your resources that you were
For sure.
referencing?
So the easiest thing to do, probably if you're open for it, is for me to give you some links to put in the show notes. All right. So I've
Totally.
got a how to start microdosing guide. It's called Activate Your Inner Magic. It has the top questions I know you've got that you're afraid to ask, including the big one that we don't talk about. And it's got journal prompts, a guided meditation, and I'd love to give you the link so the folks could sign up for that. I can also give you the link to Shift, my ebook for shifting into mindfulness without meditation. It'll include the playlist that I use. And then finally, if you want breathwork practices, I have a YouTube page that I have really started to lean into dedicated uploads twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So there's lots of
Nice.
breath work on there. There's meditations on there. And finally, if you're someone who's listening to this and you are sick of your shit, you are ready to heal in a supportive environment, then I'd love to invite you to book a call. We can chat, we can see if we vibe, and we can talk about what it would look like to work together either one-on-one or in one of my group programs.
Awesome. That's amazing. I don't want to end just yet because I really want, you kind of touched on it on the beginning, right? There's these studies and there's always, things out there, but they're usually centered around men, unfortunately. And that's not always clear. I feel like it's not always, vocalized. Hey, by the way, this is like only, right? It's just kind of assumed almost. So I just want to know more specifically psychedelics with women and what you've seen and what you've worked with and just kind of all of the above, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're unaware, it wasn't until 1993 that our federal government even mandated that women be included in studies. And so what they did is start to include menopausal women, because they're easier to study, so that they could check that box. Oh, we are studying women, but it's all women who have reached this age where they're no longer menstruating. And that's a problem, because we are about 4 different people in 1 month when we are menstruating, thanks to our hormones.
Yeah, 8
Yeah,
personally
right?
here.
So many different, and that's hard to study. So I
Yeah.
kind of get it, but
Yeah.
also no. So when we look at the research around women and psychedelics, there is a group out of the UK called Hystelica. They are currently researching perimenopause and microdosing, and I cannot wait to see what they come up with. They're also looking at the way that estrogen is impacted by psilocybin, because estrogen and serotonin also kind of interact in an interesting way. And so if you were to microdose or full dose journey when you're ovulating, where estrogen is at the highest, what would it look like if you were doing it at the lowest, where it's just when you menstruate? Hystelica, excellent, super interesting company. For women though, overall, the one study that I have seen on the menstrual cycle and psilocybin that included 3 people, like I mentioned, is a case study that was reviewed by the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine's Center for Psychedelic and Consciousness Research. So, of the 3 women, 2 had eaten mushrooms. So, of those 2, the first had PMDD, and she reported that she was able to deal with her symptoms better after she started to microdose. So, she ate 1.5 grams of mushrooms. Her period came early, her cramps were worse, her symptoms were worse. Then she started to microdose. So not at a level where she was tripping and she could handle her symptoms better. And I thought that was fascinating. Then there was another woman who ate chocolate with mushrooms and ayahuasca in it. And she had not had a period for 5 years. Her period came back the next day, and then her period was regular for 3 months. Now, she did experience some irregularity afterwards, and then eventually she was diagnosed with PCOS, which stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome, and is characterized like the first thing is irregular cycles. When she was in that diagnosis, she microdosed and her period became normal, became regular. So that's fascinating because that's what I've seen too. So I had PCOS after I came off of hormonal birth control. And my cycle now, I'm 38 and a half. So I'm in perimenopause, whether I like to admit it or not. My cycle is shifting and it is changing. And yet it's still very regular. And I think that microdosing has definitely had a hand in that. The other thing I'll say about women with psychedelics is that we do way more work than the other species on their planet. The other folks, right? The men. It's just how it is, right? Like we just do more work in general. And so we have more of the brunt of the homework. We're the ones who are often raising children. And then because of our shitty economy, we are also working. So I've really seen microdosing help with patience, help with mood overall, and help you understand how to be present in the very moment that you're in right now versus living in the future or living in the past. And that's important for people with anxiety specifically because anxiety is not a present moment sensation, right? Anxiety is very often you thinking about the future or worried about the past. And the sensations in your body are helping tell that story. So microdosing can really, I think, help you feel safe enough to be in the here and now. And when you are in the here and now, time kind of expands. Like you are more able to focus. You're getting more things done. You're able to be with your children, to be with your partner, to be with yourself. Whereas so much of our life is us doing. And so I really think that women are benefiting from this medicine because it's bringing us back to this sense of safety in the here and now. And I hope it's also allowing us to notice that, this is kind of a joke that goes around in the psychedelic field. Like, our system is not set up for us, right? Like, it's not. And unfortunately, there's not a ton that we on an individual level can do except commit to your healing, commit to doing your work. Because I think that when we heal ourselves, we help to heal the family around us, the friends around us, the community around us, which ultimately will help the collective. So even though it might seem like a really small thing, and also a huge thing to just say, do your healing, I think that mushrooms and psychedelics can really be instrumental in partnering with us on that journey.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. And so true. There's so much out there about, it feels like you only focus on yourself, but like your entire environment is going to benefit from that when you are the best version of yourself that you can be,
100%.
right? Amazing. So my last question is, I'm just curious, and maybe you don't. I haven't looked into it, but in Utah specifically, I feel like ketamine is kind of like a popular treatment. I think it has to do with like people don't drink or smoke, so then they like need to feel something. I don't know. And so they get like a ketamine treatment, right? That's kind of popular. And I don't know if you watched The Secret Lives of Mormon Houses.
I sure fucking did. And I can't believe you're about to ask me this question because I am so ready to talk about this.
Okay, please tell me all. Because I'm like, okay, first of all, like ketamine's not a psychedelic,
No,
right?
it's a dissociative and it's a horse tranquilizer that's never been illegal.
Yes.
But it can, so it can be used to go into deep trauma healing. It's been a really long time since I did any studying around ketamine. But yes, it has never been like scheduled. Like mushrooms are basically as bad as meth, according to our ridiculous government. So ketamine has never been on that schedule. It's always been used in hospitals as an alternative to anesthesia. And now folks are using it in a
Okay.
variety of ways, including at-home therapy.
Yeah.
But yes, no, I definitely watched The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Are you in Utah? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I'm in Salt
Oh
Lake.
my goddess. Okay. Let's talk about this. So I thought about doing a TikTok
Okay.
on why I think these women could benefit so much from microdosing.
You should. That would
Well, I
be
think the time has
awesome.
passed now. But either way, I'm doing it now with you. So yeah. Sorry, I just got so excited I didn't even let you ask your question.
No, yeah. That's literally, I just want to know your thoughts on it,
so
really.
I think that the fact that who was it? Demi and Whitney are the ones who did ketamine in the show, allegedly.
I think
Yeah.
so,
So Macy
yeah.
was saying she had done it for her own past trauma, and Whitney never talked about it, so we don't know what happened with her. And then, yeah, so there's that. Also, I just want to throw in the fact that they were always doing the laughing gas while they got Botox. LOL.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
in Utah,
Yes.
from what I understand, while not legal, the laws, I know of someone who has a mushroom church that is actually LLC'd in Utah, because Utah tends to not mess with folks. And it's a legit church. So maybe that's why they went to Utah, because Utah has its own rules and thoughts about religion. Now, as far as the main characters on The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, here's why I think that they would benefit immensely from microdosing. Taylor, God love her. First episode, my first thought is alcohol. Help her get sober and stay sober. But then, as I watch the rest of the show, she's very much self-sabotaging, and she cannot forgive herself. She cannot. And now I think she's broken up with that dude. So, I think she would really benefit from that. Because, microdosing can really be so helpful to help you look back at the past versions of yourself, give them love and grace, and forgive yourself for the mistakes that you've had in the past while moving forward in an empowered way. So that's why I think Taylor would benefit. Whitney, very much in her victim. She's definitely sad because her husband betrayed her, 100%. I saw that. I saw that sadness and that betrayal. And I think that microdosing could help that. She's also lacks all emotional intelligence. And so it can help that too. Very fair. Who else? Oh my gosh, I think I'm going to forget their names. I love Demi. She was kind of my favorite. Oh man, who's the lady who got the labiaplasty? Shoot.
I don't remember.
Is it Jessica? No.
I'm not going to remember.
Either way, the woman with the hair salon.
I feel like it was a J.
I think it was a J.
Oh. Yeah.
Well, when they went to the paint thing and they were painting vulvas, I was like, holy shit. Did this just get so good? And then it was because she's getting her labia cut off. I think that microdosing would really help her learn to accept her body in all the ways that it has shifted as she has been a mom. And her and Demi, I think it can continue to help them connect more deeply sexually with their partners. The woman who has the chronic illness, who has eczema, she has this chronic illness, and I feel like it would help that for sure, because one, there's obviously some inflammation related to that, and mushrooms can help with inflammation. And then Macy is the one who had the business, and Whitney didn't come to the opening, and she's the one who did ketamine, or maybe talked about past trauma. She's not the one that did ketamine, I don't think. I think that she really benefits from microdosing because of just the past trauma that she has had. I know that she was divorced or separated from her child's father, and I can't remember the rest of them, but that's kind of my take. I think that it was such a fascinating series. I can't believe you asked this question. That is so funny, because I binged it so hard, and I was talking to my girlfriend, and I'm like, dude, these bitches all need to microdose. You get to microdose. Yes. So and it won't make you high. So technically, I feel like, is that okay? If you can get laughing gas, you should be able to microdose, because it's not going to intoxicate you.
Right.
You would think.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you brought up too, the big difference of microdosing and tripping, because I think, especially in Utah, again, right, kind of that conservative culture, you hear psychedelics or you hear mushrooms or whatever, and it's immediately you're thinking visions, hallucinations, all the crazy stuff, and I think there's also a really kind of stigma of substance addiction in Utah. There's this very thought pattern of, if you do it once, you're addicted, you can't ever stop. what role, like, I'm just curious now, like, is there any research on mushrooms and, like, addiction to
Yes.
them?
Okay. So, first of all, mushrooms are not addictive. However, we can become psychologically addicted to things that make us feel better.
Right.
And so, there is this shadow side of the psychedelic world where people will just sit in ceremony time after time after time, and they will not integrate what's coming up for them. And so, that's definitely a red flag. But I wouldn't say that it's the same physical addiction, as in you need it, as things like alcohol and other
Right.
drugs. The other thing that's important to note is that the addiction um like treatment world has a history in psychedelics. So the man who started Alcoholics Anonymous got sober because of LSD. Nobody talks about that. And
Yeah.
alcohol, I got sober from alcohol because of microdosing. So I think what psychedelics can do is help you uncover the root wound that is leading you to numb out via drugs and alcohol.
Mm,
And when done in like a really safe and controlled setting, it can really be instrumental in helping you notice the triggers, notice those patterns that are leading you to want to drink or leading you to want to smoke or whatever it is that you're, feeling addicted to, and move through that in a way that is going to help you come out the other side addiction free. One other thing that I will say about Utah specifically, I think psychedelics are absolutely beautiful allies for healing religious trauma. As a preacher's
mhm.
daughter who now identifies as a witch, happy Halloween. It
Yes.
certainly was instrumental in helping me deconstruct my own Christian upbringing and come back to faith in a way that is for me very spiritual, very like pagan-esque, but more so than anything, this belief for me that yes, there is a higher power, there is God, there is goddess. I believe she's of the divine feminine aspect. And yeah,
Agreed.
and to kind of rewrite so many things that I had been told and taught from infancy. So I really had this incredibly potent full dose trip on my God, what birthday was it? 35th birthday, I think, where I really wanted to look at my mother wound. And I am not a mother, and I would never am going to be a mother to human children. And so I had this like freeze in Maiden that I just could not get out of. So I sat with mushrooms beforehand. I like invoked the sacred mother to protect me and the goddess to be there with me. And I had the wildest trip. Like I sat at the feet of the goddess, the reptilian version. She was like kind of terrifying. I saw myself in the womb. My dog, again, this dog came to me as a human child in the trip to guide me through the whole thing. It was wild. And like I came out the other side so much
Yeah.
more deeply connected to the divine feminine aspect of spirituality, of belief, of yeah, spirit and consciousness. And I think mushrooms specifically have a really beautiful way of doing that because I see mushrooms as being deeply feminine. So if you're someone who was raised in the very patriarchal male deity focused religion that is top of mind here in this planet, I think mushrooms can be really helpful for healing that because they're all about community. They're all about oneness. They're all about you being part of the divine, right? I always had this issue where I didn't see myself as part of God because how could I be made in God's image if I was a girl? I just didn't get it, right?
Right.
And I didn't have female pastors in the church that I was growing up in. So circling it back to the housewives of whatever of the Mormon wives, it's
Yes.
like
Yes.
I see so many
Yes.
things in them that are deeply wounded versions of the masculine and deeply wounded versions of the feminine that I really think would be beautifully like integrated and healed if they ate a little mushrooms. Just a little.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's so beautiful, and that's really interesting that you bring that up, that mushrooms have kind of that feminine energy. Maybe that's why, well, all of the people that, said they were so interested for the episode are women. And so I think that's so interesting. Like there's definitely this energy that, women are drawn to. I love that
Mhm.
community, right? Healing together. I think that's really
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, well, I love this. This is like amazing information. I'm going to listen to this over and over again. But I like to end with something just kind of a little lighter, a little funny. What would you say is your favorite fall, Halloween, this time of year kind of activity to do?
Well, it used to be drink red wine. I was literally just talking to my husband about this. I really love the first day of sweater weather. I live in Texas. It is literally hot as hell.
Oh,
And so the mornings
yes.
are now sweater weather. This morning was the first
Okay.
morning. That could have been my happy, actually, where I not only needed a light
Yeah,
sweater, but I had a little blanket on the back porch too.
that's
So that's it. The shift in
amazing.
seasons, as I live really in tune with my menstrual cycle, I'm very in tune with the outer seasons too. That like full day when I don't have to like take the sweater off and just be in a tank top and shorts, it's just so nice. And it'll probably happen in like a month.
Yeah.
Well, this is October 31st that
Yay.
you're hearing this. So hopefully I've gotten that by now.
Yeah.
But it's usually November.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dang.
What about you?
Dang. Awesome. Honestly, I'm really into painting pumpkins. I think it's so fun. And like for some reason, like painting on a canvas, not really my jam, but I like
Mhm.
to paint. And so I feel like because pumpkins are like rough and uneven, they're not gonna look perfect anyways. I think I'm like drawn to that where it's like it's just fun. It's not gonna look perfect. So just do whatever you want, kind
Love
of a
it.
thing.
Super cute.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been so perfect. Everyone listening is going to join on their healing journey, I hope, because you shared some really great things I feel like are so reasonable to like start doing and start implementing. So thank you for
Thanks
that.
for having me.
Thanks for listening. Remember to leave a rating and review, subscribe, and come back next Thursday for a new episode. And remember, you matter and what you have to say matters. So join me here with For the Talkers.